Hey everybody, Jess Intuitive Angel Healer here with your Grounded. Thank you so much for joining our podcast today and welcome to another episode of Dancing in the Toxic Shadows, Finding Empowerment and Hope Through the Toxicity. This is a podcast that features an empowered soul's swim through the toxic waters of life and how they have found the courage, strength, and blind faith used to obtain the life they truly want to live, and how they encourage others to take that same leap of faith, no matter if they can only see the first two steps or not. Today, we have a special guest, Katie Utterback from San Diego, California. Hi, Katie.
Hi,
How are you today?
I am doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. Katie is the certified wellness coach and also the founder of Elevated Aura. And she's going to tell you all about how she survived her toxic shadows. And I love the title that I made because her program is all about narcissism recovery. I decided Checkmate, defeating the narc within the toxic shadows. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you, and you can tell us all about how you created this powerful program to help others that have been in a similar toxic dance as yourself.
Thank you, Jess. That was such a beautiful introduction.
Thank you.
It's such an honor to be here with you and all of your listeners. As you said, my name is Katie Utterback. I am in San Diego, and I am a coach specializing in narcissistic abuse recovery. Grew up in Minneapolis, which I later learned is kind of a passive-aggressive capital of the United States.
It's a really big problem right now because that's where the center of all this police stuff is going down, unfortunately, too. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And actually, so speaking of all of that too, the racial tension, I started off my career in journalism. So I have a degree in journalism and a minor in psychology. And the reason I kind of went the journalism route was I was always interested in people and learning their stories and what kind of drove them, where their passions came from. And I was always stuck. Like, how do I share these just average people's stories that have done miraculous things if it's not, going to be on the front page of the newspaper? Because it doesn't always sell, especially the more positive type of stories. I found myself covering the police brutality beat in Minneapolis.
Wow.
It was really tough. And then, I'm in San Diego now, and back then I had this split. I loved being a journalist, but I also had this dream of moving to California. And I kind of felt like an imposter as a journalist because I had this opportunity to move to Washington, D.C. and become a political journalist on Capitol Hill. And it was kind of one of those moments I see.
You don't want that. I mean, it's really like, hey, that's the top of my career, but in reality, you're going to have an ulcer like our government does.
Yeah. So I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I was there for about a year, and what I started doing, and I want to share this story because I think this is a moment where I realized the power of the universe guiding me. So there's an art gallery that's kind of across the street from the White House. It's called the Renwick Gallery. And at the time I would go take my lunch break at this art gallery. It was free to get in. I would spend about 45 minutes in there at this one particular exhibit. It was called Tsunami, and it had all of these like a rainbow color threads hanging from the ceiling. And it was kind of in the shape of a roller coaster. So it would go up and down and have these curves. And the way to experience this particular exhibit was you would lay down on the floor and you would just kind of stare up at the ceiling. And the colors would move as the light hit and entered the room. It was just beautiful.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I would sit there and I would look at these colors and I would look at the light waves kind of dancing, bouncing around all these different, rainbows of threads of colors. And I would listen to just a free YouTube video on positive affirmations. And this was something I had never done before. I grew up in an environment where I thought that we talked about our feelings, but we really didn't. And so long story short, I did this going to the Renwick Gallery, sitting at this exhibit like 5 days a week for about 4 months. And I really wasn't doing anything other than just believing and building up my own self-confidence in what I wanted. I was just trying to figure out what does my ideal life look like? And I mentioned I always wanted to live in California. So there were some visualizations specific to that, like palm trees, driving in a convertible, spending Christmas on the beach, making snowmen out of sand, just kind of that kind of a visualization. But for me, it was more of a feeling, this feeling of I accomplished what I always wanted to. I'm successful. I'm happy. And I just
Exactly.
kept going on that feeling. I just kept trying to get to that feeling and focusing on that feeling. And I kid you not, about 4 months after doing this, I lost my job. I was fired, and it was horribly traumatic. It was the first time I had ever been fired. And the reason that they gave me too, I just didn't believe it. The reason that they gave me was that they had to hold a story for the first time in 150 years. And it was just kind of like one of those things where it felt like something was off. But I was like, okay, I don't really feel right in this job anyway. It's time to move on. So I was in Washington, D.C. I wanted to try to figure out how to get to California. I now don't have a job. My apartment flooded that weekend, and I wasn't there. So the apartment flooded so much that even though I had just signed a 1-year renewal on that apartment, I got to break the lease.
I
So there
love
was
this because this is how all of my angel stories start. Like I love it that the universe literally did not want you in Washington at all.
reason I think the universe wanted me to go to Washington, D.C. was to meet my soulmate, my husband. And after my apartment flooded, it was like, okay, this is, sink or swim, time to jump. I was going to move to Los Angeles because I thought I'm a writer. There's writers there. I can make this work. I have the passion. This is my dream. I can do it. So I flew in to Los Angeles, and there was so much concrete, I just kind of shut down. And I had family in San Diego. So I had spent many summers, spring breaks, whatever, traveling to San Diego. So I just decided to drive down to San Diego and see what that market looked like for renting. And shockingly enough, a 2-bedroom apartment in San Diego with features like parking spaces, a pool, a gym, all of that was less expensive than what I was paying in Washington, D.C. for a 1-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
No amenities, no parking spaces, none of that.
Nice.
Yeah, so I felt like I was getting a really good deal. I was super excited to move. And then this was kind of a big move for me because in Washington, D.C., I knew absolutely no one when I made that move. And I had family in San Diego, so I was kind of excited to go back to be around my family of origin. But I told you, I picked up someone in Washington, D.C., my soulmate. So this was kind of the first time in my life that I found someone that I really, really cared about enough to bring around, the family. So that really started opening my eyes to something didn't feel right. So I'm one of 5 children, and I was the last to get married of my siblings. And so I had seen, the celebrations, just kind of the excitement that came with their engagements and their weddings and just everything to do with their lives. And I always kind of felt different from my siblings. I always felt like, even though I wasn't the youngest, for example, I was always told, well, you're the one that's adopted. So it was kind of this really weird dynamic where I was getting picked on, but it wasn't really clear to me why there was this kind of tension amongst the siblings. And it wasn't just unique to me. It was like there were maybe 2 or 3 of us that would get along out of the 5 at any given time, but there was always someone that was feeling on the outs. And I really started noticing this during my actual wedding. So during the planning of the wedding, there was no bridal shower. There was no, special lunch with mom and dad. There was nothing like that. It was very much so you're on your own, which I kind of took it. I'm a strong person. I can do this. But it was kind of painful. I was kind of hurt that I felt like my family of origin wasn't really excited for me like they had been for my siblings. And so long story short, during the wedding ceremony, my husband and I decided we wanted to include a wine ceremony. And it was a way for us to kind of include our parents in the actual ceremony itself. So during that wine ceremony, during our wedding ceremony, my mother actually started yelling at my husband. And it was one of those moments where when you have a toxic parent, you're kind of aware of some of their behaviors that are not okay. And so I remember kind of just standing up in front of everyone and just quickly looking at the audience to see like, oh my God, did anybody else notice that or hear that? And I just remember the expressions on people's faces, and I was mortified about that. And that was the first thing that kind of tipped me off that something was wrong. So I started kind of noticing other things. Like I had a sibling who would not acknowledge my husband at all, even if it was just the four of us at a dinner. I had a sibling who told me to my face that his wife and then another one of our siblings were bonding over how much they didn't like me. And then when I asked if I could, so then my dad overheard this. My dad asked me like, well, can you please invite this particular sibling to a barbecue with your in-laws? I asked, all due respect, is there any way we can not include this particular person? They're actively talking about how much they don't like me. And, the response to that was, why do you have so much hate in your heart? So
I'm not sure.
Right.
I just decided to feel this way today. It's that time of the month. And I love it how it's always, men always think it's that time of the month. How about, no, you're just a jerk.
Yeah.
What about my feelings? Because, that is a big thing about narcissism. And that I really didn't get this either, and you don't get it until you get out of it. You don't even know that you're an empath and they're a narcissist and this is gaslighting. You have no idea of any of this because I did a similar thing. I'm the only daughter of my family. There's only two of us. My brother's older than me by 3 years. So I did get a lot of you're the only girl in the family, and that's amazing. But I remember my whole childhood consisting of, be quiet, Jesse. Go do something, Jesse. You're bothering me, Jesse. Jesse, you made me miss my turn on the freeway. My grandmother blamed me because there's some construction, and I was talking to her when I was 5. And I was like, blah, 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 because I'm a chatterbox. And literally for the rest of my life, and I love you, grandmother. She's passed. But for the rest of my life, I still have that in my brain playing over because I was 5 talking to my grandmother going, look at the skies, look at the puppy. I'm just talking. And she's like, Jesse, you're bothered, I'm trying to pay attention here. And she lost her way because she was in construction. And somehow this is my fault. And that's what's crazy about how adults and people that just, put like, you're a bad person and they make you feel odd. And I found that it's fear that drives those people. And I think our whole society world wakes up to fear. And that's how it rules their life. And that's why people are so damn mean in this world.
So that's a really good point, because narcissism, a lot of people are confused on what a narcissist is. Because we use it in our pop culture, just like, you're a narcissist, because some people take it as a compliment, truly.
I thought it was somebody who was really conceited. Nope, that is not.
Some people think that if you call them a narcissist, it's a compliment, like you have so much confidence that nothing will get to you. It's like, well, actually, no, that's not entirely true.
And I've run with that because like I have my face over everything because I have to, because it's my business.
Right.
But really, I'm not a fan of having to have my face on everything, because then I look at my page like, wow, you really love yourself, don't you?
Well, and there's a really good test for that. So if you're someone that thinks like, oh gosh, like if you have that gut check, like, oh my God, am I possibly a narcissist? Chances are you're not, because a narcissist cannot introspect that way. So narcissism is a personality disorder, and I really want to make that very clear.
Yes.
It's a personality disorder, which means that you cannot cure it. If you have someone in your life that is a narcissist, they cannot change. So if it seems like they changed, that's probably a love bomb, which means they're trying to win you over or hoover you. There's a lot of terminology involved with narcissism.
Yes, ma'am. And also they like to, because see, when my whole marriage wasn't toxic. I don't think it ever started out that way. But what happened is mine was a narcissist, and after about 4 like I would say about 6 years. The last 4 years were terrible because that's when the narcissism, like everything cooled off, and I found he had been moving me around. I've moved all across America with this man over the past 10 years. Never got to really have my medical career because he was constantly moving me, so I looked like a dumbass, like, oh, I look really responsible, I'm gonna hang out. Even people were like, so your husband in the military, are you gonna stay here for 6 months?
Right.
But you know, and it is so true that I finally started understanding this, that he truly did love me, but when you're a narcissist, you don't love yourself, so you collect things, and then you're so afraid of that thing that you have to make you all right, so you hold on to it, and then you scare it to death, and you make it where it doesn't want to leave anywhere, and it only thinks, that's what gaslighting is, where you only think that that's the only person in existence. And mine worked on me, because I like to point that out to people, that you're not weak if this happens to you, because I'm a very, very strong person. The things that I've survived in my life, I don't even know, like I've had near-death experiences, but this took me down. And my whole life, I lost my dad when I was 16, and so I've always been like, I'm going to make it, because I didn't have a man to push me. I had to push myself. So I've always had that raw. And when mine found me, he liked it but he knew this one, it's almost like a psycho killer. Like, this one's going to take time, and they're patient. And just know that narcissists will wait till the end of time, and they're almost like a Pisces. They'll never leave. They'll say they'll leave. They're never going to. You're going to have to be the one to exit.
Yes, you will have to be the one that exits. That's a really good point. Especially with narcissists, like you mentioned, they can wait forever. I've heard stories of people who have divorced a narcissist, and then 20 years later, they get an email or a text message from that person. Hey, what are you up to? You want to get coffee? It's like,
the angels kept popping that up, so I would laugh. That meme that says, when your ex calls on the phone and you're like, not today, Satan.
Yes. And one thing I want to bring up is that a lot of empaths end up in relationships with toxic people, specifically narcissists, because narcissists love empaths, because we like to give people a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh,
millionth. They're unlimited. There's never an end of chances. We say we're not going to give you a chance.
Right? So as an empath, we feel like, well, maybe if I forgive them, they will learn how to forgive others. Or if I love them so much, maybe they'll learn that actually this is healthier. Or maybe if I love them or do this for them, that they'll see that I'm amazing. I'm this perfect person for them. Never going to happen. The narcissist is so ego-driven, so self-centered. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about your feelings. And that was really hard for me, because for me, my narcissists were my family of origin. And it wasn't just, my direct family of origin. I'm talking about generational. As an empath, I mean, now as an adult, I understand it, but it was interesting. As a kid, I would have these moments where I was the scapegoat. So I would be completely just berated or gaslit or whatever. When I had that moment after that incident where I was by myself, I would have this feeling of complete peace. And then I would see like sparkling glitter rain down over my body. And I always felt like I had some sort of guardian angel guiding and protecting me. And I always felt that there was some sort of purpose, some sort of lesson that I was supposed to be like learning throughout this whole time. And now that I've, connected all of the dots with my childhood and all the wounds that I suffered through then, and just everything, the toxic relationship that I have with my siblings, it's fascinating to me to learn that was intentionally created by the narcissist so that, we can't overrule the ruler or the king or the queen.
It's checkmate in chess.
Yeah.
Because the narcissist is definitely, when you yell checkmate, you're taking out the king and you win. So that's what we play, that daily game. I really didn't understand how how toxic and devastating all this is, because at one point I actually, we do this in our life, we stop and we're like, what in the hell are we doing in our lives? And we look back and we're like, what did we just go through? And I've stopped and, I realized one day our biggest problem is that we say we're fine, especially women. I'm fine. If you want to hear a lie, I'm fine. No, you're not fine, because society has decided that we have all these responsibilities and times and things that are really not that important, but somehow they've made them so important that we work ourselves. I've worked 3 jobs at one time. I've almost died driving on the road because I fell asleep. At some point, you're like, you know what? I'm not okay. And how could I ignore all of these things? And I'm surprised I'm not wackier than I already am in my brain, because being a kid, my family loved me, but again, I was always the odd duck out. I was the girl. And it's funny, my name's Jessie with an E, because my dad, I think, literally wanted a boy so bad that when I came out, he's like, well, you're getting Jessie. I wanted a boy, so you get the name. And my whole life I've had to deal with that. And then I kind of look back at it like, wow, my dad was such a narcissist that he flippin' wanted a boy, and he just went ahead and plastered that name on me because I grew up in Texas. And even the women out there, I remember my grandma's cousins and aunts were not nice to me. They just kind of looked at me and scowled at me like that little irritating child, kind of like Maleficent talks to Aurora. That's how I got talked to as a child, because I was a nuisance. But why was I such a nuisance? You know what I mean? Because after you put that in someone's brain for so many years, no wonder we have anxiety, PTSD. But I like to make a point of that out there for any of you who are feeling this way right now, because nobody's going to tell you that. They tell you you're the problem. People don't look past what is the actual problem. And that's what the problem is with mental health, is that we say we're fine, or we just put it to the side. And if you know anything about chakras, your sacral is where all your emotions are stored. And so your sacral is right below your belly button in your midline, where like your groin area. So if you have really bad like endometriosis or stuff like that, really bad woman problems, think about how many emotions that you've literally squished down there for so many years. And that's why it's coming out in the form of disease and tumors and all this craziness. And I'm finding this out, and that's because I also have a pituitary tumor where I can't have children. So it makes me understand why all these women who can't have children and they're going through all this, well, that's why they can't have children, because your emotions and your hormones are going so crazy and you feel all this shame that it's not letting it naturally flow. Add insult to injury, then you don't have a kid and you go through all this. Because I was going to go through it, and my angels did me a miracle, and literally I got pregnant the week of I was going to do in vitro. I'd waited, I had a kid at 16 and wanted to have one. It didn't happen. So at 28, I literally woke up pregnant, and because my angels didn't want me to go that, because anyone who's went through in vitro, my heart goes out to you, because it's really sad you want a creation of your own so bad. And then there's people like us that people have creations and they don't treat them good. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a funny thing in our world how there's women over here would do anything to have a kid, and then there's people that have kids and they're like, I don't care about them.
Yeah, they have a kid as an accessory. I want to go back to what you said about Disney movies, because for me, my experience is more similar to Tangled and the relationship between Rapunzel and Mother Gothel. I think in that movie, you kind of mentioned this too, it really illustrates how the kids take on the blame, because the rejection from their caregivers is too painful. So the kids, you internalize that pain, and you have the shame that you take on because you think, well, I'm just not lovable then, or I'm just not likable, or I'm the problem if I wasn't such a difficult child, or if I didn't have so many issues. What's interesting too, you also mentioned disease. Our body does get at a dis-ease, And, I have thyroid disease, and there are tons of people who have suffered narcissistic abuse who also have thyroid disease. It's one of the autoimmune diseases that people end up with who have this abuse. So that's one thing I want to say too, is that if you have a diagnosis that's related to a thyroid or hormones, get a physical and work on your mental health. Do both together.
Work on your chakras, release that negative energy that you're holding.
Right now, we're in a Mars retrograde right now that is literally designed to help you clear this ancestral trauma. November 13th. So you have time. The Mars planet, there's a lot of like fiery red war, rage kind of passion, but passion can also be like that sexual energy, like our femininity. And for a lot of survivors too, myself included, part of my healing process was accepting my femininity and just embracing that, because there is kind of this protective armor that we put on using our bodies. So sometimes that's in the form of weight. We put on weight as a defense.
I did when I was with my narcissist. I literally was almost 200 pounds. I did not look like this. I look like you put a air pump in me, because he was so crazy. He would always tell me I was cheating on him, or I was looking at someone, or someone was looking at me. So I got fat, because I was like, if I get fat, maybe I'll stop hearing this conversation. Crazy, right?
Right. Or I won't look attractive to people. They won't look at me. It won't cause a problem.
It didn't help. Don't do that, ladies. It didn't help. It just made me sad.
The thing is, like, the narcissist, like, what they're accusing you of is usually what they're doing. So
exactly.
And for me, this is what I do. I run through a checklist, and I run through a checklist with people in all parts of my life. So when I figured out that my relationship with my family of origin was based on that abusive fog, so fear, obligation, and guilt, I was able to give myself that permission to say no more, because I recognized in that moment that, well, as you learn more about narcissism, you learn that it is passed down generationally. So if you have a narcissistic parent or parents, when one or both of those parents die, if you have multiple siblings, there's a battle in the siblings for who becomes the next narcissist ruler. So for me, this was a matter of survival, not just for myself. It was a matter of survival for my new marriage. I was a newlywed when all this was happening. I was married for like 3 months.
Wow.
So my first year of marriage, I spent most of it by myself, reading books about narcissism, emotional abuse, doing inner child workbooks and healing. My poor husband. I mean, it was just, I had to figure this out for myself, and that's the other thing. When you're dealing with a narcissist, if you have the ability to get out, your life will be so much better. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie. It's not. I've been no contact for 2 years. That means no email, no phone calls, no social media. There's no pictures, nothing. And the first year is really hard, right? Because that's when you're experiencing the year of first, the first birthday, first St. Patrick's Day, Halloween, Christmas. It gets a little easier, but if you have a list of everything that they did to you that hurt you, that they never apologized for, even if they apologize, it's always like, I'm sorry, but you made me do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that. I'm sorry, but.
And then, that's the other thing too, is if you're around someone who's a narcissist, you quickly learn that their apologies are really not apologies. It's more of, I'm just going to see if I can manipulate you one last time. Because if their action doesn't change, it's actually not an apology, right?
Exactly.
So when you're coming out of narcissistic abuse, it's really important to create strong boundaries and really protect yourself. Check that fog list, Am I doing this out of fear, obligation, or guilt with my friends, with my coworkers, with my boss, with the neighbor? Toxic people pop up everywhere. And especially if you're an empath, you're going to have a lot of people that are going to want to try to poach your energy.
Yeah, I'm 39 and I've known this my whole life. The biggest thing is people want to call you mean. And so I always say people either love me or hate me. And there's really no in between. And for all the people that hate me, it's not because they truly hate me. Like, I didn't do anything I didn't go, sleep with their boyfriend or do anything crazy to make them hate me. I literally cut them off, or I just stopped letting them abuse me, or I stood up for myself and they're like, well, we don't like you anymore. Well, that sucks. I wish
Right.
too bad for me. So, but you start learning, and I'm proud of you, because moving from a family of narcissists, it's the hardest thing, because my family, we were really tight, but we weren't. Like, looking back, we were just a whole big ball of karmic lessons all put together. And my dad died when I was 16, which was crazy because he was an alcoholic and a narcissist and whatever else. I love him. He was a good man, but he just didn't know how to work with his inner child, and because he was hurt. And so what ended up happening, and I would like to mention this, don't think just because you moved away from your narcissist dad that you're going to live the free life, because guess what I did? My dad passed away when I was 16, and then at age 26, he reincarnated into my husband, and at the time, and that's what really started making it end for me, because I was like, okay, like, I love you, but I can't deny that you're doing things that I literally saw my dad do, and I know that I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't right to be mentally abusive to someone. That's the thing, is you have to really own awareness. Awareness is the first step to any kind of healing, because if you don't know that there's a problem, you have nothing to heal. And that's my clients' biggest issues. When they first start out with me, I can tell how deep you are in it and how long you need to really work with me, because if you start out saying, my life's not that bad and he'll be nice, he's just having a bad day, and all this stuff, I'm like, well, we are in it deep, because I can tell when you start knowing that there's something wrong, then you start working towards fixing it, and then that gets you to acceptance. Yeah. I would like to ask you a couple of questions about your whole journey, because I'm very proud of. Most people think narcissists only live in romantic relationships, right? But it's really, I'm seeing, and now that I'm more spiritually awakened, I'm seeing so much of this play out in people's families, and I see the way that I started taking that pattern of how my parents were, and I started being like that. And that's when I had this whole spiritual awakening. They're like, no, you were not going to do that and make your daughter like you. You were going to stop it. And I've always been nice to her, but they taught me how to yell, like we were that loud family. We always yelled. And so it's courageous of you to come out here, because that's the biggest thing, is people don't want to come out here because it's shame, or, because it's your family. But, I love my family, and I never speak wrong about any of them, and I'll be there for them any day. But we've been battling this since my daughter was born, and she was born in 2011. And that's when my family literally, everything fell apart. My postpartum depression was terrible. My whole family made it worse, and nobody even came and saw my kid. And that really cemented it, that nobody met my daughter till she was 4. My uncle and my grandmother were the only ones there. Nobody even showed up at the birth of my child or the graduation of me from college. And I'm like, y'all have been bugging me my whole life to do this. I'm here, I did it, and nobody's here to celebrate it with me. And that was my aha moment, to be like, I'm good, I don't need to continue this, because that's humiliating, You're like, this is the biggest day of my life, and y'all aren't here. So good for you for moving on, because, it's not about doing what's best for you and not having guilt held over your head. And that was the biggest thing of why. All right, what was your breaking moment that made you say enough is enough?
Yeah, so I realized my husband was kind of picking up that something wasn't right. And kind of like you were saying, like he was observing how deep I was and just kind of asking me questions just to kind of prod me a little bit. And long story short, he was being completely ignored. So we would go out to dinner. Nobody would even say hello to him. And so I went to a family dinner at my sister's house with my parents, and I actually gave her the benefit of the doubt, not my husband. And I asked her, like, did something happen? Like, basically, like, what's going on? because you were my maid of honor. So, you know, like, how do you manage this? So she basically started throwing out these accusations like, oh, I can't talk to you when you're making out, and how inappropriate. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, that didn't happen though. And she just started like berating me. Nobody said a thing. Everyone else just sat there. And she threw me out of her house. And it was something that this particular sibling of mine is a narcissist, and she's thrown tantrums her whole life, and everyone always runs around her, congregates, gets her whatever she needs. So the fact that I didn't even get a phone call or a text message like apologizing or asking me if I needed support or anything, I basically realized that it was a choice of I could continue to live life as I was doing and be a part of this family of origin, but I wasn't happy. Or I could try to start my own family, and I realized that I couldn't have the two of them together because my husband, my future children, all of those topics were going to be off limits because of the tension between the two. And I just couldn't have a relationship with someone where the only thing we could talk about is the weather. It's just not genuine to me.
Exactly. That's the craziest thing. I don't understand families. That's the one thing I don't understand. But I do know that, I don't know if you believe in past lives, but I believe that I believe in past lives, and I believe all this stuff now. That's what's helped me get over this, is I'm understanding that I never learned when you don't learn your big lessons or your lessons, whatever it is, if you keep denying it or keep pretending that it's not happening, you just keep reincarnating into another form. And I've literally seen people in my life, like I said, my dad reincarnated into my husband. Those people, those toxic people that I've been running away from, they literally just reincarnated into a woman this time as my boss. And I'm just like, oh my God, like that's what made me stop running away from my problems. Because I'll just leave you guys with this. If you have a karmic lesson, until you stand up to it, have awareness that there's a problem, and you'll know because it keeps happening. It repeats, and it repeats for more than, just a year. It repeats your whole life. And you're like, holy crap, why does that keep repeating? Well, let's look at this and see what the lesson is here, because there's a lesson in everything. And that's why I really try to keep myself. I also believe in karma, like you can create your karma good or bad. So if you lose your patience and you yell at someone at the light, prepare that your karma is coming down the road and you're gonna be on the other end of that. And that's what has learned me to stop being so aggressive, because touching back on your femininity part, that's the biggest problem I think we have when we're with the females that are with a narcissist, is we end up getting that feminine touch taken away, and they become our literal battery charger packs. And so when I noticed, I wasn't I've always been nice, and I've never been malicious or mean, but I wasn't kind. I wasn't the kind Jessie that everyone knows me as. I was more abrupt, more take it or leave it, kind of, I don't care. And I was wondering where all this rudeness and harshness and aggressiveness was coming from. Well, it's coming from the guy right next to you. So if you're wondering why are you a lady and you're out here, getting all crazy like a dude, look at your partner and say, am I with a narcissist? Because that could be a very big indication that you are with one. Now, I would like to ask you, who or what did you use as a source of motivation to keep you going on your journey? And do you have any personal recommendations for our audience?
Yes. So I honestly just tuned into people who were survivors of narcissistic abuse. I love Chris Godinez. She's on YouTube. She has a bunch of free videos you can go check out there. She also has a Facebook page where she shares different articles. Lisa Romano is another life coach that deals with narcissism. She specifically talks a lot about codependency, which a lot of us who have experienced this abuse, we have to deal with that little hurdle too. And those two were the biggest ones for me. I did read I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Shahida Arabi's book, Healing the Adult Children of Narcissists. She has another book coming out, I believe, in October 2020 as well, talking about basically what it's like to be an empath and be around toxic people. But for me, the biggest moment or realization that I had that kept me pushing in my healing was something that my therapist said. And I kept going into my therapy appointments kind of giving an excuse for my parents. I was sharing the traumas that they had shared with me that they had experienced. And so I was using those traumas as a reason for them to not know any better, or for them to, I was explaining their
give
mistakes.
them a pass. Yeah.
Yeah, I was. And my therapist just kind of looked at me and she was like, "Who told you to come into therapy today?" I was like, "Nobody. I made this appointment myself." She was like, "Exactly. Your parents have the same opportunity. Your siblings have the same opportunity. Every toxic person has the same opportunity to come in and meet with someone and get help. Now, narcissists will only go to therapy for 1 or 2 appointments max."
Mm-hmm.
But
I got drug into the worst Marriage counseling, the worst. And I'm literally sitting on the couch, and the lady's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel that you're going to get divorced? I was like, it's a good 8 right now. And he's sitting here next to me going, she's just having a bad day. I'm like, no, dude, I am seriously like, but it's scary, and fear keeps you trapped, because I am a very strong person, but I can tell you behind the scenes the things that nobody hears. It's kind of like when you go by a kid and you whisper in their ear, and you whisper something really bad, and you're like, and you better not tell anybody. That's exactly what a narcissist does, because you walk around with this fear and this paranoia, and everybody's like, what is wrong with you? That's not true. And you're like, oh, but it's happening.
a really good point. Most therapists, or I'll just tell you as me personally, I do not recommend going to therapy or counseling, any sort of session with a narcissist. So narcissists will try to come into your therapy and take over, because they want to know exactly what's being said so that they know what's going on. So if you are with a narcissist, don't tell them if you're going to therapy. If you're buying a book or working on a inner child workbook, hide it. Do not let them know, because if they know what you're doing, it's going to get worse. Too, about fear. Fear is actually kind of a bodyguard for like anger in a way. So if you're feeling that fear and anger, dig deep. Is another emotion underneath.
Exactly. And I do want to point out, it does get worse, because mine started playing on my mental health. You know, obviously my depression, but I don't have severe depression until it starts out with anxiety, and then it starts toppling down. But he literally at one point had me on the mental health crisis line, trying to have me voluntarily check myself in. So that's why I say, yes, it can get much worse. It can get much worse than them just trying to be a part of your therapy. It can be them sitting next to you going, it'll be a good time, Jesse. It'll be a vacation. Yep. You'll get to have that vacation, and I'll take care of the house and the kids. And thankfully, I have a medical background training, and something popped up and said no, and I did not check myself in. I went to therapy, because that's the other option. You'll get screened, and then if you don't fit their format, you'll go to therapy. But I was like, that was another aha moment. Like, I felt like Gothica. I don't know if you ever seen that movie, but it's she's a mental health professional, and her narcissistic husband, who's having an affair with one of the patients in the hospital, gets her committed and makes her crazy. And she's telling him, well, I'm not crazy. And she's like, that's okay. And I felt that way my whole life. And that's how a narcissist can make you feel. So if you feel like you're crazy out there, I want to also point this out. Crazy people don't know they're crazy. So if you keep being told you're crazy, think of that as an opinion. And unless you have went and tried to burn down houses and light animals on fire, I'm going to say that you're probably not crazy.
Yeah, that was something I used to say constantly, is that I feel like a crazy person, because I was being gaslighted all the time. I didn't know what was what. I didn't know how to trust myself or trust my gut. One other thing that you mentioned regarding therapy is, you know, narcissism, There are therapists, there are counselors, there are psychiatrists, there are doctors, there are police officers who are narcissists. So if you by chance happen to run into one of those, don't give up is what I'm saying. Just try to find someone who really understands narcissism and who can validate you and what you experienced. Because otherwise that's going to be more damaging if you're not validated first, guys.
Yeah, you're just going to keep adding on to it. Always encourage people to go get help, go get care under a doctor, whatever it is. But don't just get care from anyone. Right. It's like picking out your shoes, you know, you're going to pick out your car. You're going to be with this for a while. So you need to make a good decision, and you don't need to be pushed into it. And that's what a lot, but you also don't need to go doctor shopping, because that drives me crazy when people don't like what they hear, so they go and try to get the answer that they want, and those people end up getting themselves, I've seen the end of that journey too, and that's not productive either.
A trauma therapist or someone who understands narcissism.
Or come talk to one of us, because we are experts at it.
Exactly.
Get yourself a coach. That's why coaching is so big these days. But make sure your coach practices what they preach. Biggest thing. And what does self-care routine look like every day so that you keep your mind, body, and soul balanced since your experiences?
Yeah, so I wake up every morning, and one thing I have a puppy now. So I always wanted a pet my whole life. I was always told no. So I finally have a dog, and I'm not a morning person, but I am now. I love waking up early with him, and in San Diego, it's beautiful in the morning. It's like 69 degrees. Go for a little jog, listen to music. I love music that really makes me feel confident and sexy and inspired, and just embracing, you know, who I am. And just, I want to feel when I'm listening to music, like I'm just going to spontaneously start dancing. So that's me. Running down the street. One thing that I do though every week is I take a nutmeg bath. So I know it sounds a little strange, but nutmeg, I basically just make like a nutmeg tea, and I sit in this bath and I listen to positive affirmations for about 20 minutes. So nutmeg, actually, the kitchen spice, is actually something that's been used for centuries as a healing tool. So what nutmeg does, if you believe in like energy vibrations and everything, so your aura expands outside of your physical body. And as we, you know, pass people or interact with people, we pick up their energies. And for us empaths, we also happen to pick up energies based on the people that we live with. So for my husband, I can pick up energies from his coworkers and whatnot, even if I have not interacted with them. So what I do in this nutmeg bath is the nutmeg clears the low vibrations, the things that pull you down, the things that make you experience struggles or make you feel like you're pushing and getting nowhere. So I sit in this bath and I think about positive things. And then this is the important part. You have to sit in the bath as it drains. And as that water is draining out, the nutmeg spices are all going down. Think about all that negative energy leaving your body, going down that drain, and feel your body filling up with love and light and happiness. I swear it's amazing.
I do the same thing with an Epsom salt bath. So Epsom salt is a natural cleanser of negative. And if you sit in an Epsom salt bath, the same thing, that will actually start pulling out the toxins and that's for more of the people. If you have trauma, it's good to sit in these baths, because your chakras are you got 7 spinning disc wheels. It's the easiest way down your Hara line here. And each one of these is supposed to be spinning to make your energy, you know, kind of light up and make you function. But if you got one spinning super fast and then one kind of going and then one not even ticking, how do you expect all your energy to be replenished? It's supposed to go in a circle, so it's like your heart, in and out, good blood in, you know, bad blood out, and it goes around. But when you close off your mindset and you sit in your sorrows and in a low vibration, then you end up clogging up your pipes, and it's kind of like that's why your bathtub starts overflowing, and it's kind of like that, and then you feel sick. And with the auras, that's very true. Our aura goes about, I guess, like 6 feet. That it goes out about 6 feet, so you can feel somebody coming up on you because they're hitting your aura. Empath aura is like a sponge. That's why we soak up, because it's little porous. Like, so a regular aura is like you have this force field, and then the more trauma you have, the more you let in. But when you're an empath, it's like a sponge, and you got all these porous stuff, so you're just sucking up everyone's energy, and you really need to take time and say, is this my energy, or is this their energy? And that's the biggest help for me, because I thought it was all me, and it wasn't. Me sucking up somebody in a bad mood, and an empath feeling that way. That's why we feel so angry, because we're feeling supercharged things of everyone else. We're almost done here. So what does your journey look like now that you've taken your power back from the toxic shadows and its inhabitants?
I am so much happier. I have a life filled with hope, inspiration, positivity. I have so much more energy and love for myself and for life than I did before. I just have a confidence now that, I never felt that I would have. I just am so blessed. I truly found my soulmate. I have a beautiful puppy who makes difficult moments like staying at home during a pandemic so much easier. I love being by the ocean, and all of this would not have been possible if I didn't step into my true self. If I didn't follow how the universe was pushing and guiding me, I wouldn't have made it here. It's so easy for me to just say to my new husband, like, this is too hard. I'm not going to give up, talking to my parents or my siblings. But what does that kind of energy do for me? Does that just kind of leave me bitter and sour? And so I really had to take kind of, accountability for myself. What kind of life do I want to live? And the thing that kind of pushed me to just focus on myself too was something that Chris Godina said. If you didn't break them, you can't fix them.
You have to step out of your comfort zone to get opportunity. And I think the reason why is literally fear is the only thing standing between you and happiness. If you want to know what the secret to life is, stop being fearful. Fear is this crazy thing that is not real, but yet because I've went through a bunch of different experiences as being an intuitive healer. And I used to be able to see spirits right in front of me. I literally had an old man in a car pull up next to me in Colorado when I was out doing direct sales. The whole car saw him pull up next to me, drove behind me, and disappeared. Because of my fear, I shut all that down. So I've had this gift my whole life of being an angel intuitive, but I've been scared. So then once you show them enough fear, guess what? They'll either torture you. That's why you hear people think I'm possessed or I got a demon, because they got a dark energy that's having fun. They're like, oh, love it. Because when you're fearful, they love that. But when you turn around and you're like, hey, you don't scare me. And that's kind of the attitude that I had. But I asked them, hey, can you guys start showing back up to me? I'm sorry, I was scared. Because they're like, seriously, it's almost like ghosts. I'm just trying to get a message. I'm not trying to scare you. But you're like, what is happening here? So every time they would try to get a message to me, especially my dad. And when he died, the regret goes so deep, by the way, for narcissism. It goes to your past life, because my dad knew he wasted a good life that he could have had. He could have changed his ways, but he wanted to be a narcissist and an alcoholic and have inner child and be the victim his whole life. So now I've really noticed he doesn't want me to take that path. And he's not too worried. Nobody's too worried about me, because I've made it this far. I don't go down quietly. But I really can feel his energy behind me making me do stuff differently and changing it, because I can tell he's a different person. And I feel like I helped him finally pass over, because I used to have dreams about him, and it scared me. Like, I'd wake up panicking and cold sweats because he was contacting me. And it was simply because I didn't get to say goodbye to him, and he felt so bad about, you don't think about this. People don't think about the way they act right here and today until they die. And then guess what? There's no more time after that. And that's something really to think about. How are you going to spend your day to day? And what happens if there's no tomorrow? And that's what really helped me stop the fear is, who cares? Because, I'm going to do it. I'm going to live up the fullest today and do what I can and stay in the present moment. Mindfulness is so important when you're on this journey, because narcissism is a different kind of healing. I don't know. I think this is the hardest healing. I've had a lot of things I've had to heal in my life, but healing a narcissist personality disorder is like the hardest thing. It gives you, if you didn't have strength, you will have enough strength to bench press a Buick at the end of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if you can get out, if you can tell yourself that you deserve better, and it's just about telling yourself you don't deserve, no human deserves to be put down, kidding or not. No human deserves that every day. So if you were sitting there having someone telling you you're not good enough or blah, 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 get up and leave. And don't look back. And I promise your angels will always, whatever you lose will always be replaced. So you're not losing anything, you're gaining a lot.
Yeah, a big fear that a lot of people have if they come from toxic family structures and they want to go no contact, but they're fearful, like, well, who's going to be in my life then? Who am I going to hang out with? Sometimes you have to clear the space to make room for your new tribe. It's
exactly.
painful. But you have to figure out, is this worth it to me? Because no one is going to be there to hold your hand when it's 3 a.m. and you want to send a text or make a call.
No, it's about being able to be okay with being by yourself too. Oh, it's just me and you, kids, so let's do this. I can tell that you've taken back your power. It's not your mate. It's it's different when it's your family. And I think that when you have kids, you've just broken the biggest karmic lesson ever. So great for you. You're going to be very excited about this when you have kids. You're going to be like, thank you. I'm not passing that down.
Yeah, but I do have a fear. So when we grow up in that environment or we're around toxic people, we pick up fleas, right? Those toxic habits and patterns. So I do have that fear, which is something I'm working on. And, that's why I always tell my clients, this is practice makes practice for the rest of our lives.
Exactly.
Every day, we're going to have to make the choice to, are you staying no contact today or are you going to break it? Are you going to start that process all over again? It's a choice every moment. Am I going to eat a healthy food that's going to sustain my body? That's another way of self-love, right? It's our nutrition. It's our budgeting. It's everything that we do for ourselves. Are you getting enough sleep? All of it.
Yes, exactly. Well, I've really enjoyed this talk, as you can tell, because we've been chattering on forever. But this is, like I said, this is my jam. This is what I do. I talk about women empowerment, and it's not so much of a feminine, it's about everyone, because this isn't just happening to women. This is happening to men. And I just watched a really cool thing about Wonder Woman, how they made the movie Wonder Woman, and the actress that plays it was on there saying, all these girls come up and say, oh, I love you, you're Wonder Woman, you're my hero. But we also make sure we do this for the boys out there, because they can see what an empowered woman is. And I loved it, that was her biggest thing, that she wanted to, because it's the boys who are with the girls. And John Mayer, I think, made a song about
and daughters.
Yeah, and that song makes me cry because it's true. Like, that song's always. My dad must be here with me, because that song really hits me. That maybe if my dad would have been a little kinder, then I would have. But then I go back to, he was that way. I've been reading a book, and it was talking about you can't blame your parents for the way that they were to you, because they only taught you to their level of ability that they were raised with, right? So they only taught you what they knew. And that's what really finally let me forgive them, because it's not about forgiving a person. It's about forgiving yourself, and it's about letting that burden free off of yourself so that you don't carry this around. Because I've been carrying, one of my karmic lessons is resentment, and I've resented my family for acting this way my whole life. But I found out, you know what? They couldn't have acted any different because that's how they were taught. So only thing I can do for myself at this point is to, one, forgive them, and not because I love me enough that I'm not going to carry your toxicness with me. I've carried it with 39 years. My family doesn't define me. They're not me. Just because we're blood doesn't mean that they're me. So that's the first thing you got to do, is have that acceptance of it, and know that, forgive them, let it go. If they abuse you, it's because they were abused. I look back, and a lot of the way that my mom and dad were treated by their parents, because they were in the 50s, mind you. Now, that mindset was terrible. So now they just, and this didn't really even hit me that, man, until you get older and you're like, man, I'm becoming my parent. That's why. Because now it's my choice to keep continuing those terrible, toxic values, or to stop them right now. And I choose to stop them, and that's why I am dedicated to this journey, because I do not want my daughter, she's going to have her own issues, but if I cannot make them all be karmic lessons of family, that would be fantastic. What guidance would you give fellow beautiful souls out there that are doing a similar toxic dance, and how they can change their environment?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to recommend is there's this beautiful comedy sketch on Netflix. This woman basically talks about how amazing it is to spend time with yourself. She's like, you don't have to compromise. You can go take a bath. You can order food. You don't have to compromise on where you're ordering from. You don't have to feel guilty if you want to order 5 dishes. And I realized in that moment, because for me, I always felt like, oh, if I can't get along with my family of origin, are people going to think that I'm a problem, or, I just can't get along with people? But then I realized, well, actually, no, I am a beautiful soul. I am a beautiful person. I just was around people that were helping me realize a lesson that I hadn't learned in the past. And so now that I'm on my way learning that lesson, I really just found that surrounding yourself with people who are on that journey, people who want the best for themselves and for their families, that's who you need to surround yourself with. So try to remove the toxic people. If you're not comfortable blocking them or removing them, at least try to mute them, and just try taking little baby steps of either distancing yourself or coming out more confident and taking your power back, because you really deserve it.
And you just work on it every day. It is a constant thing that I work on every day. And like I said, healing has no time. So don't it's not like a diet. It's not like you have to fit into a bikini in 2 months, a wedding dress. So don't treat this like a diet. What it'll do, it won't cement that it's actually happening. It'll put that maybe it's going to happen, but it's not going to last. So it's all about a mindset. And my biggest thing is, if it doesn't feel good, ask yourself why it doesn't feel good. And then when because that person yelled at me, and then just kind of take it from there. Why did that person yell at me? Well, because I did this. Well, was that really bad? And if you kind of take yourself down that journey and stop, because what we do is we put the critical committee in there instead. So if you can just be patient with yourself, this is a whole healing. If you've had trauma for over 40, 50 years, it's not going to just go away in an hour or a week, but you can make it better, and it does help if you help others. So I am very happy that this world has more ladies like yourself out here helping. Where can our listeners reach you if they want to hire you as a coach?
If you want to have a free consult with me, and actually, because of this show and because of everything going on with the pandemic, the first 4 listeners that schedule an introductory call with me, I will offer them 4 free sessions.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
I'm just trying to help, right? I just feel like there's just so much heaviness in the world, and especially if you're just coming out of narcissistic abuse, it's really scary. So if you're nervous about it at all, we can do 4 free sessions together. You can book an appointment with me at elevatedaura.com, or you can always connect with me on Instagram or Twitter. I'm under the handle Katie Utterback. And Utterback is like cow udder and then like back.
Definitely go check her out, because if you are, or think, because you don't know if you're in a narcissistic relationship, but if you think you may be, please come chat with one of us, because I promise you, you'll feel so much better. It feels better when you don't feel alone. When you feel like you're not the only one dealing with this, that's where the healing starts coming in. You're like, phew, well, if Sandy can do it, I can do it too. So, well, thank you so much for being here today. There you have it, beautiful souls. Another powerful guest that has learned to survive their swim in the toxic waters and break up with their toxic dance partner, fear. If you need help trying to find a new dance partner, please reach out to myself or my guest on the show today and let us show you how a single 4-letter word can change your mindset permanently. And that 4-letter word is love. With love, all things are possible. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dancing in the Toxic Shadows. Until we meet again, this is Jess, Intuitive Angel Healer, sending healing angel vibes. Love and light, everybody. Take care.